All right, so we are joined with Anthony Franco. Anthony launches, scales, and sells businesses, and now he's on a mission to help other founders do the same. As the host of his own podcast, How to Founder, he and his co-host deliver twice weekly deep dives and practical advice on the challenges founders face. With 7 companies launched and 6 successful exits, including 2 to public companies, Anthony offers seasoned entrepreneurial insights across tech, AI, consumer goods, services, and manufacturing. Anthony, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate you.
That intro was brilliantly written.
It's genius.
It's a work of art.
It's never awkward to hear the intro that you think is going to sound good read out by somebody else. Sorry about that.
Hopefully the pauses and cadence right, man. I was trying.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Appreciate you.
Good to have you.
Yeah. So we're gonna jump right into some. Before we get into it, we're gonna jump into some lightning round questions.
Okay.
Aram, you want to get started?
Yeah. I'm curious, Anthony. What's the most interesting thing that you have learned this month? It could be on any subject, any random dumb fact, maybe something deep. It doesn't matter. The one thing that, man, in the month of January, this really struck me.
So the thing that's popping into my head. So I'm kind of I hate writing, but I'm a copywriting nerd. Like I'm always looking for new copywriting tips and tricks and techniques.
Interesting.
And on my podcast 2 weeks ago, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget her name. She was brilliant. But she said writing hooks needs to start with the 7 deadly sins. And you have to get the person imagining themselves committing the sin.
Wow.
And
okay.
I have written, I think that is brilliant. And have actually applied it a couple of times, and the hooks, like if you apply that mentality to it, the hooks actually turn out really nicely. So yeah,
Nice.
that's the thing I learned this month that I'm going to keep with me for the rest of my life.
Awesome. Good tip.
So
I have one.
Oh, go for it.
What is the best team building exercise that you've ever done or participated in?
I suck at team building exercise. Like I am the worst person to have a part of a team building exercise. A story that keeps coming back in my life by one of my good friends, and I founded a couple companies with them. We were at a team building exercise. So I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to tell you a story about it.
Okay.
It was a team building exercise for a startup that we worked for a long time ago. We were employees, we weren't co-founders at the time. And we had this team building exercise. We were all in a group outside in a park setting. We had these 2 facilitators, and they had us handing around a rubber chicken, a coffee pot, and a rope. And they were just saying, be as efficient as you can to get this thing around the circle, around and around and around. And I got the rope and I held onto it, and then I got the rubber chicken and the coffee pot, and I tied them all together. And then handed it to the next person, and it went around and it went around and around and around. And I was like, wow, that was really clever. And what really happened was, so the facilitator said, we've never seen anybody do that. And I was like, wow, I was pretty smart. And then he started asking other people how they felt. And they're like, well, we think, we wish Anthony would have done this. And I don't think it was, everybody started complaining about the thing that I did. And I recognized that I was a terrible team player, even though I was clever and I thought I was going to get praise. Everybody was complaining about the fact that I did that on my own without talking to anybody. So I don't think I'm a good person to ask about team building stuff.
So you had the right answer and the wrong delivery all at
Exactly
once.
Exactly right. So I've never tried to do team building exercises ever again, just because of that one bad experience.
Funny. That's hilarious.
Is that a lot like it's not what you said, but how you said it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. In a group setting where it's like you're full of shame afterwards.
That's great. That's awesome.
So what is your, what's your hype music? What gets you going? What's what's your drive fast music? Something like that. I mean, you mentioned copywriting and everything. As a copywriter, there are things that music I play this and I start writing. What's yours?
I love Motown. Motown's. I'll listen to Motown and it gets me going.
Okay. So
Nice.
along that same vein, like "I Wish" by Stevie Wonder, that bass line is
Yeah,
let's go.
Stevie Wonder. I got my daughters into it. Like my daughter right now on her HomePod is playing Ray Charles. Like I just love anything. If it was on the Blues Brothers movie, I'm a huge fan.
Okay.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, it's a good start. Get us off to the races
Lightning
here.
round.
Yeah, good questions. So, Anthony, catch us up a little bit because we want to talk a lot about how you're helping businesses exit and scale to that point and what that process looks like. But before we get there, give us a little bit like on the front end of your journey. How did you get here? What's kind of the evolution of your development into what you're doing now? Where did this all get started?
My first side hustle, I was doing graphic design for Mexican radio station T-shirts. And so that's where I first got into hey, I can work for myself and go hustle clients. Then started to realize probably from that team building exercise, I'm a really crappy employee. So the only way I can earn a living is as an entrepreneur. Now I've gotten a lot more mature in understanding what team dynamics look like, but I started in entrepreneurship because I didn't really have any other way to make any money.
Okay. That's fair. So you were kind of a natural at entrepreneurship just early on. That was
There's no
drive.
such thing. I don't think there's any such thing as natural, but yeah, I was forced into it by necessity.
Okay. That's fair. That's good stuff. So I do want to kind of slide it. We'll kind of hop back and forth. So this is not a super linear timeline in terms of questioning, but
Neither is my brain, so this is working.
Good. Okay. Well, we're all on the same page. So what are essential steps for planning for a smooth, successful exit, and how are you determining when it's the right time to sell a business? What does that process look like for you? What are you doing with these companies that you're consulting for there?
Yeah, so I've sold 6 of my own companies, and it fundamentally comes down to its founder. Like it's such a personal decision that the decision you just know. You can build all the criteria of who you want your perfect spouse to be, and then you meet the one and they don't match any. Like it's like you just this is what it looks like. You just kind of know when it's time to marry that person or to exit your company. It's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same like gut. You feel like it's ready. You're ready to move. The steps. So, but I will say, unlike marriage, everybody exits their business, whether or not you have a say in how it happens. You can control or have some control of how it happens, but you get hit by a bus, you can get sick, you could die. A competitor can come in and squash you. Key employees can leave. Like there's all kinds of ways to exit a business. It's better to do that when you have some say over it. And there are different ways that you can do that. You can do that as a lot of business owners decide they're going to leave it to their son or daughter or family or key employees. That's a great way. It doesn't always work out that way. They think their son's going to want to take over and they don't. There's also something called an ESOP, which is an employee. It's basically your employees buy you out of your company and it becomes an employee-owned company. I really love that as an option. I don't help businesses with either of those. I'm not an expert at legacy planning or ESOPs. But when it does come time to where you think you want to sell, and kind of take your business to market, you probably should be planning that anywhere from 2 to 5 years out. And there's really some simple things, some brain dead things that you can be doing. For example, make sure your books are clean. I know that sounds silly, but make sure your books are like, there's nothing exotic in your books. Most businesses are bought relatively on a value, small businesses. So I'm not talking like, if you're looking for $100 million exit, the criteria changes quite a bit. Books still need to be super clean, but the valuation, how you value that company is different. But smaller businesses, They're valued. The SBA, like SBA, your acquirer might be getting an SBA loan. Your tax returns really matter. So if you're trying to mix in personal expenses with your business in order to save on taxes, that's might be great for taxes, but it's really bad for selling your business. Another thing that you can do is make sure you have revenue diversity. 20 to 30% of your revenue coming from a single client, not your buyers are not going to like that. Yeah. Another thing that you can do is you need to work your way out of being a requirement in the business. So you're wanting to leave, so therefore, how is the new buyer going to come in and take over if you're a critical component of operating that business? So those are 3 things that are coming top of mind.
That's great. That's very practical stuff there.
That is very practical.
That's great.
So what has been like one of your most challenging experiences when trying to exit a client?
So
like
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it like all those 3 things and having to figure that out, or did you come across something that maybe wasn't shared?
Yeah, there is no circumstance where you're selling a company or helping an entrepreneur plan for an exit that there's not hair on the deal. I call that hair on the deal. Like it's messy, just in general. So it gets really difficult. So there was a business that I was talking to, an owner that was running a retail store, and they wanted to exit that retail store. And it was a passion for that person. This person just loved what they were doing. And they weren't making any money. This person wasn't even paying herself.
Wow.
So she was truly doing it because she loved what she was doing. And she's like, I'm ready to retire. It's like, who would buy a business? who would buy the business that's a volunteer job, right?
Yeah. You can also work here as a passion project.
So the first thing you need is profit. And usually a business, I mean, unless, again, you're a startup that's growing exponentially fast, and the unicorn type deals where they're not buying you for profit, they're buying you for a strategic position in the market.
Sure.
Most businesses are bought on a multiple of profit. And so therefore you need to actually have profitable revenue that is fairly low risk in sustaining that revenue.
That makes sense.
Does make sense.
I like that.
So I'm curious, because I know you have a background in being on Shark Tank, and you had a deal with Kevin O'Leary. So that's always fascinating to me. I've watched many episodes of Shark Tank in my day. What can you tell us about that was exciting?
Shark Tank is really interesting. So 40,000 companies try out for Shark Tank a year.
Yeah.
180 fly out to film. 120 film and 80 air. 40 get a deal. 40 get a deal on air, a handshake, and then 20 of those ink a deal. So you go 40,000 to 20. It's a really interesting dynamic. And the reason why that is it's true to life. So you go on air, you go and pitch in front of the sharks. They haven't seen a single thing about your company. This is the first time they're seeing you. And they're asking you questions and they're drilling you. But, I was on stage for an hour talking about my business. And an hour is not enough to deep dive into a company to find out if the owner is telling you the truth or not. So they have to do their own due diligence. Yep. So it's a scary as hell experience, a lot of fun, but also really difficult to get all the way through to inking a deal.
Yeah. What to the extent that you can share, what were you doing? What were you pitching there? And what did you deal with Kevin?
Yeah, so the company was a consumer product company. We made reusable sticky notes. Company was called MC Squares. We sold direct to consumer, mostly online. And I built a factory around the product line and launching new products. And Interestingly enough, so the deal that we agreed to on air was a little bit different than the deal that we closed on, because when
Sure.
we shook hands on air, we didn't close our deal till over a year later.
Wow.
So the company had grown and blossomed, and so the terms of the deal changed.
Yep, that makes sense. That's cool. Did you obviously, like you said, with Shark Tank, there's so much going on, and there's so few people that actually get there. Did you get the opportunity to work in some capacity here and there, have correspondence with Kevin O'Leary directly? Were you always working with somebody who was kind of associated with his company? How did that ever play out?
Yeah, both.
Outside the show?
You know, each shark engages with their companies in different ways. I know Barbara and Lori, and sometimes Cuban, if he really loves the project, they'll dive in deep and get operational.
Okay.
Kevin will do that as well. For us, though, we didn't need him to be operational. We needed him for his reach. So
Sure. Okay.
every time we launched a new product or had some company announcement, he would be sharing on social, occasionally going on MSNBC and talking about his deal with us. So
That's awesome.
So it was, he was great. He's really a good guy. He loves his entrepreneurs. He really fights for his entrepreneurs. He's a good guy. So he was just he was a public fan of the company.
That's cool. So you correctly figured out ahead of time, hey, what would a strategic relationship look like with Kevin, rather than just kind of like shotgunning around hoping you guys could work something out. You knew that for his involvement, his reach was actually going to be a lot more beneficial than maybe the nitty-gritty and the day-to-day operations of something that you've already established.
You make that sound a lot smarter than I did not think it through that to that
Okay.
detail before I went on.
We can just cut it and say this is what Anthony did. And
I should have just taken that and said, yeah, I was that smart, but no, that's not the case at all. I was really surprised that Kevin was interested in my company at all.
Okay. Wow.
I didn't think he would be the one that I would ink a deal with, and he just liked our gross margins, and so and given the fact that we really wanted consumer reach, and Kevin was the most active out of all the sharks in social and doing news appearances, that it turned out to be a great fit for us. But
Awesome.
I didn't plan it that way.
You didn't come up with that play beforehand necessarily.
No.
Just
but maybe
out.
I should start telling people that. It makes me sound smart.
Did you already have like a game plan on exiting after Shark Tank?
It's a fascinating question. There's so I help companies launch and scale, and I've built. So I'm involved in not just startups, but also companies that have been around for 30 years. But on the startup side, to kind of broaden that question out a little bit, startups that are looking for capital are always told you need to have an exit plan. I think that's a terrible piece of advice. An exit. So Cuban actually says this. Nobody starts a business in order to think about how they're going to leave it. And I think no true entrepreneur, I think that's actually really true. But if you're asking for money from investors, they have to know that you know that they want their money back plus a bunch.
Sure.
So an exit plan or an exit strategy, no, but you can say, investor, here's how you're going to get your money back. And here's how I'm making sure that you get your money back. And here's companies like mine that have exited and who they've exited to. Like, having optionality for exit is really great, but not having there's some entrepreneurs that'll say, well, we're going to sell to Salesforce in 3 years. Great. You have a very clear path. Most companies don't exit like that. Most companies are like, just build a good business, make it profitable, have good revenue, have good quality of earnings, and you have options when it comes to selling.
Yeah, that's good.
Are you approached, or do you have to go and find people? How does that whole process usually work?
It's rare that, I would say it's really rare that a company is approached for acquisition unless they're a SaaS business. Those companies get approached quite a bit. And if you have a .ai URL, you're probably being approached quite a bit. But that, those are trendy things that's not sustainable. It's you can go to market on your own. Again, this is self-serving, but I'm a licensed business M&A advisor. So, don't hire me. Hire somebody that helps you bring your company to market. You're gonna field a lot more offers, and you're gonna have a more you're gonna go through a process in order to market your business correctly.
So I've kind of follow-up question to that, Anthony. When you're talking about most companies don't ask to be acquired, like that's not an offer. Are you speaking specifically to the software industry or just greater businesses in America as like a whole? Is that just kind of industry categorization? I mean, I assume that's generally the case. I was just curious if you were segmenting it to a particular industry or
yeah
not.
So just in general, so there are buyers, there's strategic buyers that have M&A departments that are sending out emails or sending phone calls or LinkedIn messages out to folks that say, hey, are you interested in being acquired?
Yep.
You kind of have to be on their radar in order for them to reach out. So again, it happens for sure, and some acquisitions do happen that way. But I would say on all the, and I don't have the data on this, but I'm just going to gut it, right? So of 100 companies that are acquired, 80 of them were not approached by their acquirer. Maybe 20 of them were approached by an acquirer, and they sold directly to them. But you don't know. Did you sell for? Did they sell for not enough because you only had a single source of an offer, or could you have done better if you went out and looked for more offers? Maybe you could have done worse. It's just rare that happens that way.
So Anthony, I recently spoke with an extended family member who was approached by a larger company in their area in the same line of work that she's been building this business for 13 odd years and has created quite a system now. So one of the things that I told her, I'm going to share this episode with her when it launches. I was curious to ask you this because I knew our episode was coming up. I'm assuming if you've had an offer, if someone's come to offer to buy your business, you're already in like that smaller segment of companies that exit that aren't, that are being approached, right? So you're already in like a small niche already. Is it true that you always want to see about opening it up so you can get more than one offer? Is there ever a scenario in which like, oh yeah, we're just going to entertain this and see if we can get a deal with this one? Or is there a process in place to actually solicit additional offers from other competitors?
Well, there's a good thing and a bad thing about something. There's something that good can happen out of it, something that bad can happen out of an offer like this. So, keeping this anonymous, right? There are some organizations will go out to competitors and say we're interested in acquiring you, that don't really have an intent on acquiring you. They're looking for. They're looking how much information they can get out of you, right? And I'm not saying that's the circumstance. It's just be aware that you may be dealing with professional M&A folks that they're just looking to take advantage. On the flip side of that, if these are good people, and it's not to say that so they're bad people that are doing that, but it's why are they making this offer is really the first thing you need to ask yourself. The second thing is they may just be like, hey, we're going to offer you to buy you out, and you can look at it and not even care if you could get a better offer. It could just be enough.
Yeah.
And so if it's enough, you still probably need. You certainly need representation. It may be an M&A advisor, a licensed M&A advisor. It may just be really good legal counsel that has M&A experience. You're going to need that legal person anyway. Whether or not you have a broker. So just, tread lightly, and it doesn't. You don't necessarily have to go to market, but There might be a what if for you in 5 years. What if I had?
Yeah.
Could I have gotten more? That always happens that's human nature. So it doesn't hurt to talk. I mean, shoot me a LinkedIn message. I'll talk to you for free just to talk to you about what your options are.
Yeah, awesome. And then, so I'm really curious too, because you obviously are someone who's very qualified to answer this question I have coming up. And as someone who's experienced, you've had several exits here. What is a myth about entrepreneurship? So this can be fairly broad, that you wish more people understood.
I think entrepreneurship is romanticized quite a bit.
Okay.
So that's what I have a couple actually. One is that it's romanticized. Two is that you need to go raise capital. Most companies that start never raise capital; they're bootstrapped. And by the way, you have a higher likelihood of success if you bootstrap it versus raising capital.
Okay.
So try to find a way to do it without raising capital. And then one warning: it's lonely. Entrepreneurship is very lonely. And so just, you need to have a fairly good social foundation in order to get you through it. And you need support. You need to go find other founders, other entrepreneurs to go talk to. You need to listen to my podcast.
That's right. Some community and some motivation.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, my podcast is about tactics of entrepreneurship. It's not community. It's more about here's when this thing happens. Here's how you handle it. Anyway, but but seriously, go find other entrepreneurs to just sit. And there's formal groups like Vistage and or there's informal groups where you just go to meetups, entrepreneurial meetups in your city and just get involved in the community, because there's nothing better than being an entrepreneur in trouble to talk to another group of entrepreneurs. They're going to just tell it to you straight.
Yep. It's good stuff.
Okay. So Anthony, what's your favorite app or tool that you use? Whether it's on a daily basis, personally, professionally, what is it?
This is going to be a boring answer, but my two go-to tools are Adobe Illustrator and Google Sheets. I do everything in those two, like build brands in Illustrator and then figure out whether or not the brand's going to make sense in Google Sheets. Of course, I use AI, but that doesn't make me different. I think what makes me different is how scary good I am in Google Sheets. And I'm really not bad for a former developer in Illustrator.
Nice.
Okay. And how can we find you? How can we, us and our listeners, how can we help your business? Where do we find? I mean, I see the, at Anthony Franco.
That's my LinkedIn handle. Yep. Just find me on LinkedIn at Anthony Franco. It would be great if you tuned in, listen to our podcast. Just go to howtofounder.com. Okay. And we're on all the channels, and you can get to me on LinkedIn through there, or just YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're all on all those channels.
Okay,
awesome.
Any final quote, word of wisdom, a life maxim that you live by?
Start. If you're it's better to start than to overplan. Just go.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Anthony, it's been great having you on, man. Thanks so much for sharing with us today. And there's been some great insights here from someone with a very unique background, a lot of success. So we appreciate your time. Look forward to staying connected through How to Founder podcast and hearing more from you down the road. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate you.